Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Welcome to GearFest 2021. We have something really special for you today. We have an opportunity to speak with the men behind several of the most important brands in the pro audio business. We have Andreas Sennheiser and Daniel Sennheiser with us, the co-CEOs of Sennheiser. It's great to see you both.
Hello and welcome to everybody.
Yeah,
Hello.
we're excited to have you join us here at GearFest. We wish we could do it in person. We wish we could have you here with us in Fort Wayne, but we'll make do with international Zoom call today.
We all gotten used to that, I guess, very much over the past 12 months.
Right. So there's so much to talk about. Sennheiser and the various other brands and members of the Sennheiser family. There's so much to talk about there, and of course, such an important part of the Sweetwater family as well. But tell us a little bit about yourselves. You both have very interesting backgrounds, business backgrounds, born in Zurich, and the studies that you've done in different places you worked before you came to Sennheiser as well. Andreas, would you like to introduce yourself to us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm the engineer here from the two of us. I went to Zurich, actually also my birth town, when I came back to study electronic engineering and also manufacturing engineering. So I really got into the electronic and production part of things because I always had an inclination towards the technology side of things, plus then also the music. But at the time, really becoming trained as an engineer was my passion there. After I really didn't know what I wanted to work in around 2000, I decided to do a PhD because that was gave me more time to think about what I wanted to work then later. And during that time, I happened to meet the CEO of Hilti, the power tool company. The big red power tools that you see on every construction site. And I worked for them for a couple of years, and I had my first outside experience and learned a lot about company cultures, learned a lot about how to develop a business. And when Daniel was a little bit earlier to join than the family business, when I realized that actually there was a great opportunity for both of us to work there, we joined forces, and ever since we do this together.
Nice. And Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I guess I'm more the creative person, customer-facing person. I studied industrial design in Switzerland and in Pasadena in the US. Worked in advertising for quite some years, internet and advertising, before joining Procter & Gamble, which is a wonderful school to learn business. And I was there for around about 5 years before joining Sennheiser, when I realized that continuing a legacy of such a family business is actually something which I have a lot of passion for. I have a lot of passion for music. Both Andreas and myself play instruments on a private basis with more passion than talent, I guess, but that's a lot of us, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I see a guitar in the background behind you there, and Andreas, you mentioned that you have some guitars out in your living room as well. So you do bring a musical background to what you're doing as well.
That's
Absolutely.
correct. Yeah.
Right. So the company Sennheiser, the family business, if you will, dates back to 1945, and Dr. Fritz Sennheiser. Can you give us a little rundown, either or both of you, on sort of the history of the family getting into the world of Sennheiser?
Well, it was right after the war when our grandfather, who was heading a research department to work also on encryption technology at the time, after the war was over, there was nothing left. There was no research to be done for anyone. So he decided to use his skills, the brain power of himself, plus 7 fellow researchers that were with him. And they looked if they could build something. And the good thing about the time at the end of the war was, if you were talented enough to build anything that made sense, you would have a customer, because there was really nothing left. So he turned his research background into an entrepreneurial endeavor, which in hindsight, he said, if he had known how difficult it was, he would never started it. But that's probably the common theme of all founders. If they had known the cumbersome times, they would not have done it. And so from that time on, really the innovation spirit of Sennheiser and the research-oriented mindset was built and is still alive today. So a lot of what we do today is really built on that kind of spirit and also the will to acquire new knowledge, to go where no one else has been before, and therefore sometimes do things which is beyond commercial reason, but all of a sudden wonderful things emerge from new steps in the fresh snow somewhere.
What's coming out of this curiosity and this never being satisfied with the status quo is that Sennheiser has developed over the years many milestones, such as the first wireless transmission developed together with German television, but later on also things like the interference tube microphone, which gave us an Oscar in the 90s, but also breakthrough technologies like the first hi-fi headphone, which is more consumer product, and maybe we'll come to that later. It's that business which came to Sennheiser only at the end of the 60s, but now has gone. We just sold that part off to concentrate on the pro business much more and bring the pro community and the audio for video community much more technology from Sennheiser.
Right. Yeah. It's such a broad range of things that the company's done. It's fascinating to look back at some of the early things. If I understand correctly, the very first product was a voltmeter that came out in 1945, and the first microphone was 1946. Correct? The DM1 and the DM2, and then the DM4 with the noise canceling and things. So in those days, were they primarily creating microphones for the broadcast industry? What were they making microphones for?
Yeah. It really started with a copy of a microphone that was existent already from Siemens. So they came and asked if they could manufacture such a product. And during the attempt to manufacture it, they just made it better, and then they made it their own microphone. So they didn't want to stay with the copy and just manufacture. So they operated it. But it was for speech mainly. It was for an entire Europe that had to be rebuilt more or less, and therefore a lot of people needed microphones to address the public. But it was also for the broadcasting industry at the time.
Right, right. So when you were growing up, how aware were you of the family business of Sennheiser and the products and the reach that the company had?
Not so much, actually, and that's good, because when you're a little kid and you grow up in actually Sennheiser is on the countryside. It's in north of Hanover, somewhere in a very beautiful countryside, but there's not a lot of things around. So growing up there, yes, the company was there. I can still remember the smell of metal being milled and things like that. So I guess that's one of the childhood memories, and playing with the little pieces that were thrown away because they didn't qualify our quality standards and things like that. But to realize what a heritage and the passion that a lot of our customers have for the brand, that only came later by understanding really who the great musicians are, which are the very meaningful moments in history which were said into a Sennheiser microphone, like when Kennedy was at the wall and said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," which is a very famous phrase. It was said in an MD 421. So things like that you only realize later, of course.
Right, right. So it's a very interesting, looking from the outside, an interesting dynamic having two brothers be co-CEOs. Daniel, you started with the company in 2008, Andreas in 2010, and then in 2013 you were appointed the co-CEOs of the company. You have very different backgrounds, Andreas with your engineering background, Daniel more with your design background, and but you both have strong business backgrounds as well. How do you separate what you do? Do you both do everything? Do you say, you do this and I'll do that? And how does that all work?
I think part of the secret sauce of success of working together for us is that we're on the one hand very different in the way we were educated, so engineering versus creative and design, but we still share a lot of common values and thinking. So with that, we are extremely well aligned on a value level, on how we we want to develop the company, very customer focused, also very people oriented. So with high standards, both morally and products. So that's, I think we are very well united without even talking to each other about that. But then at the same time, when it comes to a business problem or a technical problem, something, we can look at it with completely different eyes, which just makes the solution better. So it's very rare that we just see the very same things. And with that, I think we just share also a lot of family love and passion for what we do, and therefore it works well.
Right.
And to be very precise, we don't have a segregation of duty. So some people ask us, you do this part, you do this part, but as Andreas explained, it actually makes sense to not separate. We are a redundant system, which is good. It means we can be at two points in the world at the same time, which pre-corona was very important. Right now a little less, because a lot of things are done by Zoom, but like right now we're not in the same location, and we can have a discussion here together, which is wonderful.
Right.
And also probably it's a unique opportunity to do it this way, because probably we hardly ever show up both at the same time in the same place. So that's actually a good opportunity doing it virtually.
Right, that's great. One of the interesting things, and both an opportunity and a challenge with a company like Sennheiser, is that you have such a long history, and you have all these iconic products that you've created, whether it's the HD line of headphones, the 421, the 906, the MK8 shotguns. I mean, I could go on for a long time listing all the iconic products. But of course, the company always needs to move forward as well. How do you balance that, respecting the tradition and the history versus moving forward into new areas?
For Sennheiser, it's absolutely natural, because we have so curious engineers, and the history is not something you make by being conscious about your history. It's something that happens, and it's actually more the customers that tell us later, this is an iconic product or this is a historic product, and we happen to build them for a long time because customers still want them. So the intent is really to always push the boundary of what's possible, to go the next step and create the future of audio. The heritage kind of comes later by accident or as a side product, because when we do something, we do it right, and we do it to last. And for us, this is probably one of the most sustainable ways of building product, because our products last for 40 years, 50 years, and you can repair them after 50 years, or we repair them for you after 50 years. And that's something which creates in the end the legacy and the history and the passion of our customers. But actually, we are always pushing forward to the next big thing.
Right. Some of the things that have come out recently, in 2014, you launched the Sennheiser streaming technology. You've got the Ambio technology, the Dear Reality. Tell us about some of those initiatives and some of those different directions the company's heading in.
One of the thought behind this was that we've seen that 3D audio solutions, both in virtual reality and augmented reality and all kinds of production workflows, will start to emerge. So it was very early. So in 2014, it was more or less just joining dots which were somewhere in the universe. And out of the spirit of curiosity, we've been researching 3D audio algorithms and solutions since more than 20 years. So you may remember our surrounder, which was a somewhat crazy styrofoam thing with 5 speakers in it. So it was a 5.1 system that you would wear on your. So it was a commercial disaster at the time in the 90s, but it was giving us a lot of things to think how we can reproduce a perfect 3D sound sphere. So we took a lot of this technology, which we've always been researching on somewhere in the background, and said, okay, now let's really look into 3D production workflows. What if we cover from really one end to the other? So really from recording with a VR mic, through processing with rendering technologies, then mixing, then Dear Reality came into play, and then playback. The sound bar, the first sound bar that really produces Atmos into the living room. So we really wanted to cover the full workflow of 3D audio production to reproduction. On the one hand, because we believe it's going to be a big business one day, but also because unless we really know end to end, we're not really understanding what our customers are required to do. And therefore, this was how the Ambio I would say, thought or work universe was created there. We then, of course, spun this off into more the automotive sector also, where we have now started to work with automotive companies, because it's a perfect environment to have 3D audio in the car, and also in other areas. This is where it really started, from joining the dots of 3D audio may be a big thing, and then just taking the research that we had from the past 20 years and put it into products. This is typical. This is maybe typical how new things at Sennheiser start. A lot of the things are always there somehow, because people are just interested in exploring these routes. And then when it becomes more visible and really the vague dots start to make sense suddenly, then we can combine it and really start with a fairly good level of knowledge already.
And I think in that respect, it's great to see how Ambio and the 3D audio production picks up, not only on the production side, but also on the playback side. And it's something which we believe has still a lot of room to grow, because it just gives you such a much more natural experience of audio, less fatigue when it's in a business environment, more emotions when it's in a TV or a movie environment, and just more depth and more memories when you think about a classical recording. So we believe 3D audio, spatial audio is the way to go, and there will be much more coming in that direction as well.
Right. And Sennheiser has, if I understand it correctly, you have a number of dedicated research facilities that you work out of when you're designing and creating new technologies. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we also work with universities and with different companies together to get specific parts that we maybe not have in-house, or where we want to explore something to go a little bit further. So we're not only looking directly at the next generation products, but we actually also look at some of the foundation behind it.
How far out would you say that you're planning? I see associated with the two of you in particular the word strategic a lot, and strategy. How far out are you looking?
Well, we're looking out as far as we can imagine right now, based on the technology. But so we're always, of course, making a 5-year plan, and we have a 10-year horizon. But some of the technologies that we work on take some years. So if you look, for example, at binaural recording, which is today a big thing, and it's finally become a big business, which is also a form of 3D audio. We've done that already in the 70s. We stick to certain things, and we have the courage and also the passion and basically the patience to wait until the business is ready. Sometimes, yes, we're a little early. Like, for example, in 2009, we created the first true wireless headphone, which was way ahead of its time, because at the time mobile phones didn't have Bluetooth integrated yet, so you needed to have a streaming or a transmission technology which was added to the mobile phone. So we look at these things far out, and I think this is when we look at it from both sides. Andreas from a technology side, and me more from a customer acceptance side and a customer trend side. We then can find the timing for the technology as well. Like, for example, we're in these days launching our next generation digital evolution wireless system, and that's a big thing for bringing a real use for the digital technology to the user, and not just because it's digital.
The wireless technology has played a big part in Sennheiser, dating back to 1982, I think, was when the first systems started coming out. Talk a little bit about that. What and I realize you weren't part of the company in 1982, but what has driven Sennheiser to be so involved in the wireless side of things?
Well, I think that the first wireless microphone was, I think, launched in '58. That was really with the German broadcasting and TV industry. And there, it was really to free people on stage from the cable. That was the be all and end all for the people to move freely, to not stumble over cables. Interesting enough, for the next decade, the wireless systems were always perceived as inferior to the cables, because everyone saw a cable and trusted the cable because it was there. And
right.
it took a decade or even more until somebody accepted that also you can go live with a wireless link. At the time, it required 8 AA batteries to run, of which 4 were needed just to heat the tubes, and 2 were needed for the transmission. So it was really an interesting design at the time. Today, if we think about our D6000 small body pack, the SK6212, which is smaller than a matchbox, we've come really a long way from the first big chunky thing that would always show up like a gun under your coat, to now these micro transmitters and receivers that you can hide anywhere. It was really driven by the use case from the customer and our technology making it possible, and that's still the case with every new endeavor that we go into.
Right. Well, I'm using a Evolution Wireless actually right now for this for this interview, so we rely on them here at Sweetwater as well. In addition to the dynamic mic I have here, the Sennheiser. Another way that companies grow and expand their technology is by acquiring other companies. And a very interesting member of the Sennheiser family is, of course, Neumann. Tell us a little about the relationship of Sennheiser and Neumann.
Well, Neumann is an interesting case because, of course, Neumann is one of the inventor of the microphone itself. So we always had a lot of respect for the company, Georg Neumann, and they created legendary microphones such as the U87 and so on. So we always had a great respect for Neumann. And when in the late 80s, beginning of the 90s, Neumann was financially in trouble, our father, Jörg, at the time said, okay, this is something interesting and we can integrate that. This was our first large acquisition. And in hindsight, it wasn't done very professionally. So it took us, the whole due diligence process and all of that wasn't done in the right way, because as an engineer, our father was fascinated by this brand name and didn't look maybe in the books enough. But then as well, typically Sennheiser, when we make a decision, we bite the bullet and we go through, which meant that we had to streamline the portfolio, get rid of certain development which wasn't at the time profitable anymore. But the microphone were something which were really the core of Neumann, and from there on we gradually built it up over the years, and added the KH monitors line, which is also came out of an acquisition of the brand Klein & Hummel. But today Neumann really stands synonymous for the studio and and recording, and not only studio in the sense of a big recording studio as we know them from the past, but a studio today can be in your living room, in your on the go. But Neumann still is the best gear for this recording endeavor, especially the large. If you're looking for a large diaphragm microphone, or for a wonderful reproduction system with the Neumann monitor. So we keep this brand Sennheiser and Neumann very much apart in terms of how we approach, for example, the development. Those are completely separated development teams. They share certain knowledge in the background, and they look at what each other knows to inspire them. But we keep the development teams, the marketing teams separated, because we believe there's a different philosophy behind a Neumann product and a Sennheiser product. But then we streamline, of course, and Sennheiser is very good in manufacturing, extremely reliable, and so we do a lot of the we do all of the manufacturing of Neumann products at KG in our headquarters in Germany. So we keep what's different for Neumann, and we join what is really creating the common standard, and the success, especially during the pandemic, is showing, I guess you at Sweetwater see that as well, is showing us great success, because a lot of the musicians who cannot go on stage right now, they equip themselves, they produce a lot of creative audio content while they're at home or while they're in the studio. And I'm looking forward to a firework of creative exploration when finally the big festivals, the big concert, the live concerts are possible again, which is very imminent. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. So is there ever a situation where an idea for a product comes up and you don't, how do you decide which goes where? Because there is a little bit of overlap. There's a handheld microphone from Neumann. There's the MKH and obviously the 421 and some of the microphones, the 906 that are very common in studios as well. How do you address those situations where there might be ambiguity of which way to go with it?
Well, we believe in a certain level of healthy competition. So there's so we definitely want to avoid to really go out with the same value proposition, same price point, same look and feel, and it becomes more or less replaceable. But we still see that Neumann buyers, they have a different spin on when they buy gear. And also those who go on stage with Neumann vocal microphones, such as like Bryan Adams, for instance, it's really the microphone he goes on stage with. He would not go on stage without. And so I think there's also a lot of mindset in there. And because we have very, very Neumann-minded customers, we also can afford some of that overlap because it makes sense that you don't necessarily have to always switch the brand if you are with a slightly different use case.
Right. We've talked a lot about the capture side of it with the microphones. Tell us a little bit about the reproduction side of things.
Well, the music headphone was basically also invented by Sennheiser in 1968. And it's interesting to see that, especially in that year, which is iconic for music, Sennheiser came up with a sound reproduction system which you could transport everywhere and listen music to. So the HD414 was the first open-air headphone, was the first hi-fi headphone of the world. And it was extremely successful over many, many years. And yellow ear pads and black plastic headband. You could still buy the ear pads as a replacement part, which we still furnish, of course. But that created the listening side of audio as well. And over many, many years, Sennheiser was very successful in that on the hearing or the music side, but also on the professional headphone side, like the HD25. Those are icons as well. I don't know how many years the HD25 is in production, but more than 30 years now. And it still is in production, still the workhorse for many DJs, for many sound engineers. We also believe that Neumann being the studio brand, this is where we explore a little bit as well how we can add some of the Sennheiser knowledge to the Neumann brand, and for a Neumann customer also allow them to have a signature Neumann headphone with all the benefits of a Sennheiser headphone, but of course with a special design and also a special sound signature, which is right for the studio. It's a very, very flat response curve. So we believe that both sides are important, the listening and the recording side, and everything in between as well. We look at where Sennheiser can make a difference, or Neumann can make a difference, through the recording chain, the whole workflow, to the mixing chain, and then with the reality, of course, and then with the playback chain.
Over the last 10 years or even more, we've transformed the company from being a provider of goods, really just a microphone here and a headphone there, to really engaging with our customers, understanding their work, their art, and seeing where can we make things easier, make things better. And there's always, this cascade. First, it's got to be better, then it must be faster, and then latest it must be cheaper, and we try to always push it where it gets better, and then a little bit then also faster or easier, but really push it to where it gets better and make your life in creating things or the lives of our customers easier by just providing more than just a microphone that works. With the newly launched Digital Evolution, the app that comes with it really is as a first glimpse into the future, where we really want to provide value-added software parts to every product, but then also for an entire system.
Right. Do you foresee a day when wireless will be more present in the recording studio? Do you think we'll have a time when cables will be obsolete, if you will, in the studio?
If there is a benefit to it, yes, of course. But because today a D9000 transmission is as good as a cable, only safer because it can't break. A cable, you can always have a problem with the connector or with the cable itself and so on. But on the other side, the cost-benefit ratio for a wireless system today at the quality of a cable for a studio just doesn't make sense today. But we see that as an opportunity when everybody links into a wireless network, which is latency free, of course, and that's mainly the problem that we would have in that respect today. We're exploring a little bit of that already with our streaming technology, where we're using a standard Wi-Fi environment to provide lip sync, very low latency audio streams for people that are hard of hearing or at university. So it's more a public address system over using your own device, your own mobile phone, using a standard Wi-Fi connection. So we're tweaking there. We're looking what's possible, but of course that's not studio quality. And the studio quality today would be either D9000 or D6000 or a cable.
Right.
I think where the wireless idea in the studio comes together is when we think of virtual studios, where one musician is in this place, another musician is another place, etc., and they still want to rehearse or record simultaneously. The wireless part becomes more like the cloud link that we have there. And also today we still see that it's not as latency free as we would want it to have to really play perfect in sync. But here also a lot of research and development can be done to really also make sure that what we experience today all in one studio can also be done without traveling around the globe and virtualizing a lot of what happens in one place right now.
Right. So I'm curious, given your backgrounds in engineering and design, how directly are you involved in the product development and the approval of products and the design of the products?
I think it really depends on the topic. But for the larger part of what we do is more, we make sure that we have the right spirit, the right resources, the mindset, and really allow for innovation to happen. Truly believe innovation is not something you can install through a process or through whatever, a workshop or something. Innovation happens when you provide the right environment, the right people, when the problem is big enough and not just a little tweak. And where I see our, at least my part on the technology side, is really to ensure that we have the necessary environment for real innovation to happen. And Daniel, you can say how you see that on the brand side, and I think it's more or less along the same lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually very similar. We use I actually use the design process, which is about understanding a problem, understanding a customer, and looking at something with fresh eyes without perceiving that we already know the answer. So, for example, a customer that is buying a toaster is not looking for a toaster, but for a toast. So, is there a different way to create that toast? If you approach a problem with that view and you create an environment and then hire people that are better than yourself, you come up with solutions that are better than what an individual person can think of. But we need to create the environment for them to work together, designers, engineers, production people, marketeers, all these different multifunctional teams need to work together, and it's not about Andreas and myself having a better idea than them, because that rarely ever happens. What we can do is we can create the environment for them to be successful, strive and be passionate about what they do, and that creates the better result. And we're proud actually of that culture of passionate people who are so passionate about the problem and our customers, that they come up with things which were never thought of before.
Right. So bringing us to the current day, you mentioned the new digital wireless systems. Mm-hmm. What else can we look forward to from Sennheiser in the future? Where are things going?
Of course, we love to surprise our customers, so we would spoil the surprise if we would now disclose a lot of our ideas. But what you will see more and more is that we'll focus more and more on the workflows of our customers. This is the be all and end all for us, that we look also for products which may be beyond just a microphone or a headphone, but something in between, which allows just an easier installment in the part of our integrated business, but also making sure that our products become smarter and smarter and smarter. Like Daniel said, the new digital line is not digital because it sounds cool and it's digital, but because we can then offer additional services through remote support, through the app, through a lot of value-added services, and you'll see more and more of that. While at the same time, of course, we'll still push the boundaries of bringing better gear out. We're still a little bit gearheads, so we still love the next best gear that you can have.
Right.
One additional thing is that it's great to engage more and more with our customers. And here I'm not talking about only the end consumers, but also the customers like Sweetwater, because you are so close to the end consumer, and you know the problems of the end consumer or the user better than we do. And I think that's something which is great to see, that we now focusing really on the pro business. It allows us to be maybe less of a distributor of products sometimes, but more a real integrated part of the community, which we are today, of course, very much. But we would like to intensify that collaboration and that partnership, like we do today with this interview as well.
And maybe the last thing, which is more short term or midterm, now with the pandemic hopefully coming to an end, at least in the normalization, almost everyone is vaccinated. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for everyone to go out again, enjoy music, dance in the rain, listen to a lot of loud music, and just enjoy the beauty of the passion that we all work for, and that's creating technology for more emotional moments. And that's really the be all and end all, I think, of everyone in the music business. This moment of joy and emotion is the feeling that unites everyone in this industry. And I think we're gonna share a lot of those moments now, hopefully soon again.
Right. Wonderful. I love that. It's a great sentiment to wrap things up here, and of course it's also the sentiment behind GearFest as well, and interacting with everyone around the world and sharing our mutual passion and love for music and technology and audio and gear. And so thank you for mentioning that, because that is certainly a driving sentiment of it, what we all do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. You're very generous, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mitch.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
We've been with Andreas Sennheiser and Daniel Sennheiser, the co-CEOs of Sennheiser. Appreciate the time they took and the conversation we had with them. I learned so much about the company, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thanks for joining me here today. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater, and this is GearFest 2021.